Hello everyone and welcome to A Slice of My Life. Nope, this is not mail call, but I did just receive this. In fact, I went out and I met a man named Yun, who is the guy behind MiniPock. As you can see, the logo and the branding on this box. And you guys are wondering what this is, right? This is the Fishbone Spinner inside this box. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to Yun for giving me the opportunity to give you guys an exclusive look at the MiniPock Fishbone Spinner. Now before I open up the box, let's take a moment to appreciate the beauty that is this box. I've never seen a spinner being presented in such a box before. Look at this. Completely made of wood. It's solid wood, guys, and very beautifully finished, completely white all over, underneath, everything all around, and it has a little groove over here where you put your finger underneath and you slide the top cover off. That's how you open up the box. Now let's do this together. Here we go. Look at that, guys. How beautiful is that? I've never seen a spinner presented in such a method before, in such a form. Right from the get-go, very, very impressive so far. The first thing is that we are greeted with an authenticity card. You can see it's Fishbone number 1. Yep, I got lucky number 1. This is Fishbone number 1 in stainless steel. Date of birth, that's really cute. 29th of June. Today is actually the 30th of June. So, yeah, wow, that's really cool. He just packed it in yesterday. This is the measurements. The weight is 150 grams, so it is very hefty. All of you who love hefty spinners, this is quite possibly the most hefty bar spinner in the market right now. Stainless steel, founder and designer. And on the back is the logo. Very nice logo. It looks like a t-shirt pocket. I like it. And then we have a thank you card. So that's his name, his full name. I don't want to butcher your name, Yun, so I'm just going to call you Yun. And we have the Facebook group right here, MiniPock VN. Yes, this is a Vietnamese design. Yun right now is studying in Singapore, so he's located here. But this spinner completely manufactured in Vietnam. Designed by Vietnamese, manufactured in Vietnam. And he's living here in Singapore, so he reached out to me and he said, you know what, I would like you to do a review on this. I'm like, wow, sure, why not? As long as you allow me to be honest. Inside here, very, 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 very dense foam. And I'm gonna say 4 varies. And we have a holster that looks a little bit like the Hyperstone, but the way it's meant to hold the Fishbone Spinner is a little bit different. And I'll get to that in a short while. But yes, here you have it. The nice holster where you slip the fishbone in. Got a loop up here so you can hook it onto your key fob or your key ring. This is a little bearing removal tool. Very nice small little bearing removal tool in a nice unique shape that reflects the company's logo. A little pocket, MiniPock. Let's get into the spin itself. That's what you guys have all been waiting for. It comes right out of the box. Let me just try to lift this up and see if there's anything else inside. Nope. Packaging and everything on point. There we go. Let's just leave this out and we'll cover this up and we'll put the box aside. Let us now talk about the fishbone. The fishbone really looks like fish bones, doesn't it? I like it when spinners are named in such a way that it resembles the shape of it. But let me tell you guys, right off the bat, this is hefty. 150 grams for a bar spinner, no joke. Everything is stainless steel. I'm going to remove the buttons before I actually spin it. Buttons come out like that. Oh, I like it when buttons are made this way. Yes, very good machining. These buttons are turned nicely. One solid piece. Very nice. Perfect fit. Now let's look at the bearing retention method. It is a bearing retention style where you actually have a retention cap. And let's unscrew this. There we go. It is an R188 bearing. And I believe this is a 10-ball hybrid ceramic R188 bearing. Yep, it comes dry. Very nice. Good grooves inside as well. And let's put it back. The bearing retention ring looks like it's a little bit unfinished on top, but that's really not much of an issue. You know, at the end of the day, it's going to be hidden under the buttons anyway. Yep, nice and tight. Let's install back the buttons. There we go. The finishing on this is a hand polished finish. Now you can see on the raised area over here, it's very, very shiny. It does have a bit of machining marks, but what caught my eye was these marks over here. These resemble the 4-point shuriken by Addictive Fidget Toys, and I mentioned before that it's like many steps to make a curve. Now, when you look at it this way, you cannot tell that it is all steps, but when you look at it this way, you can actually tell from the reflection. And let me tell you guys, this feels good. It's not as obvious as when you feel it on the 4-point shuriken, but this is obvious enough and it's very soothing. I really love this texture over here. Good job. Now, giving it a rub down, I will tell you guys that this has virtually no hotspots. Yes, I've handled it earlier, so I've already had a good feel for it because I met Yun just now in person. So I'll just really honestly tell you guys that virtually no hotspots. There probably was, like in this raised area over here, the corners right here, probably these corners as well, but because it has been hand polished, these are nicely rounded, not causing me any problems whatsoever, and it's just not painful at all. Well, honestly, my first impressions is my point of concern would be these inner designs that are sticking out. I don't know what these are called, but these are like the fish bones kind of a design, and I don't know if these will actually cause me any finger fatigue over the next few days as I put this on my EDC, but from the looks of it, I don't think it would because it is very nicely rounded. So enough of me talking, let's give this a spin, shall we? Two-handed, here we go. Wow, it's nice. Okay, so this is the thing. Earlier on when I was actually handling this, I mentioned to Yun that it looks like it's off-center. Like if you look at the inner ring over there, it looks like it's wobbling and shaking in and out. He said that he felt the same thing as well, and he told his designer that it looks like it's not centered. But when you're actually holding it in your hand, this thing is smooth. It's really weird. Like, I think this is intentional. Whoever designed it purposely chose not to make it completely symmetrical, and that gives it a very unique character. Look at that, it's just like shaking. Look at the buttons just staying still, but the spin itself looks like it's shaking, right? But if you look at the outer edge over here, it's completely fine. So the inner edge, it looks like it's moving up and down. So when you actually balance it on your finger, no problem, because you know, it's not going to be affected. There's no wobble. Of course, this is a bar spinner, so yes, it will be affected by the gyroscopic effect for sure. But what Yun mentioned is that he's able to hit up to 7-minute spin times on a two-handed table spin. So I'm gonna have to test this out later to see if it really is true. But from the looks of it and the heft of it, I don't really doubt him. I believe that this is able to hit 7 minutes without a problem, because really guys, it is really heavy. Now the weights of course are thrown out from the bearing in the middle. So yeah, I mean, this is designed to get pretty solid spin times, and at the same time the finish itself really just makes it very nice to hold. It is slightly bigger than most spinners nowadays. Look at that, it's just big. So yeah, these are my first impressions guys. Look, easy to balance, not a problem, and very nice weight, very nice heft. The only thing that I personally don't like, it's a personal thing, is that this is such a beautiful polished finish that it actually becomes a fingerprint magnet. Look at that, got my fingerprint on it. I mean, what can you expect? They actually made the effort to hand polish all of this. These are my first impressions guys. So far I'm very impressed with everything. The packaging, the presentation, the finish, the fact that it is so heavy, solid stainless steel, already hand polished, and all these edges are rounded off. Very unique design as well. So far so good guys, but I'm gonna have to put this on my EDC for at least a week and then check back in with you guys and let y'all know what I really think of the Fishbone Spinner. But so far, Yun and the MiniPock team, this is impressive. I gotta be honest with you, a little bit big, but very impressive so far. Nice product from Vietnam, nice buttons, nice frame, everything seems to be going good so far. So in order for me to give you guys a very honest review and what I really think about it, just give me a week and I will get back to you guys. And yes, Yun was kind enough to actually let me have this for a week or maybe even 2 before the actual release of the product. So during this time when I'm actually fidgeting with this guy on my EDC every day, I'll be asking him a lot of questions. All I know so far is that it is going to be available in stainless steel, brass and copper, and it'll be charged at about, I think, 120 USD, which if this thing costs 120 USD, I would say it is pretty worth it. The heft itself, that size, the amount of material, the machining and the effort gone into it, the polishing and all that. Look at the presentation, comes with a holster, with a bearing removal tool and all that. I think 120 is pretty awesome. I mean, think about it, the Hyperstone was also 120, it also came from Vietnam. And I think that Vietnam is just killing it at this spinner game. Look at the whole presentation of everything guys. Oh, one more thing I forgot to share with you guys. This is how the spinner fits into the holster. With this cutout over here, the buttons will sit in there, but what adds an extra, I guess, security or layer of security is the fact that this outer shell or the holster itself actually hugs onto the spinner frame itself. You can see that it is pushing outwards. It could be a double-edged sword, I'm not so sure, because when you push it in this way and it stretches out, it also means that it's going to start wearing off at these edges. Right, it's really secure. Look at that guys. This is way... Oh shoot, I even hit the light. Yeah, it's super secure guys, and in order to take it out, you just gotta lift it up from that slot inside just like that, and pull the spinner out. Really good job. Really good job. So I will cut the video here, guys, and I'll check back with you guys in a week's time. See you then. Bye.
1 week later.
I am back after a week of having the Fishbone on my EDC, and it has been a pretty unique experience, and I'll get to that shortly. First is a size comparison with a stubby. Now you can tell right away that it is almost twice the length of a stubby. At 8 centimeters long or 80 millimeters long, the Fishbone is one of the longer bar spinners out there in the market today, especially in terms of today's kind of spinner standards. So that also adds to one of the unique points of the Fishbone spinner. In terms of the width itself, it is almost the same width as a stubby, but just really long. Check it out. Now I'm going to talk about why I mentioned that this spinner was a unique experience to have on my EDC. First of all, it is very hefty for a bar spinner. I was really surprised, and I still am. For a bar spinner coming in at 150 grams, that is really heavy, honestly. Not as heavy as the Delta Core, which was about 180, but this being 150 outweighs every other bar spinner that I have. Now at the same time, I realized that the core, I should say the middle part of this spinner, I'm just going to take the buttons off and explain that to you guys. So I want to say that the core, which is this part that actually holds the bearing, is a little bit taller than majority of the spinners out there. Let me just grab a reference spinner for you. Here we have a Mini X by Spinnetic Spinners, and I'm going to just take off the buttons and give it a little comparison. Now if you look at the core of the Mini X, which is just this part over here, you can immediately tell that it is shorter than the Fishbone itself. Look, the Fishbone's core is just so thick. The only other spinner that I know that is slightly thicker here is the Rebel by 0 Hour. Let me just grab the Rebel and show you guys. Here we go, this is the Rebel spinner. Now you can ignore the buttons, just look at the core itself. Now if you compare that to the Spinnetic's core, you can immediately tell that this is actually taller than the Spinnetic's core. All we gotta do is just line it up next to this ridge, this inner ridge over here, and you can tell immediately. Now the fact that this is a taller core compared to the Fishbone, just look at that, the Fishbone is just even taller than this. So that's actually something that adds to its uniqueness. Now why do I say it's unique? It creates a much more obvious wobble because the buttons have to be longer. Now if you guys hate wobble, you're gonna hate this spinner, I kid you not. And in order to illustrate what I'm trying to say, I have a few buttons over here, and of course, I have a 188 bearing, not the one in the Fishbone, just another 188 bearing. Now this is a standard size Spinnetic button set. This is a 2R Designs crossover with Spinnetic buttons, power button set, and these are the Fishbone buttons. Now what I'm gonna do is just put the bearing onto the buttons and tighten them down, and you can see the space between the bearing itself and the buttons. So this is what it looks like when you have the buttons and the bearing for Spinnetic's buttons. And this is the power buttons. You can see the tolerance is almost the same as the Spinnetic buttons. But then when we get to the Fishbone buttons, you can see how much taller it is. So that means that any movement of the bearing itself is going to be amplified due to the sheer height. So without the bearings itself, this is what I mean. Look at the clearance in between the lip of the button and that little inner ridge over there, because the inner ridge is where the bearing actually sits. So you guys can see clearly the Fishbone buttons are taller by about maybe 1 or 2 millimeters. It may look minute now, but it actually translates to a huge difference when you actually handle it on a spinner. And in order to further illustrate what I'm trying to say, I have a portal with me, and these are the stock portal buttons on the portal itself, and this is how much wobble it has in terms of play because of the bearing. That's about as good as it gets. Now that we know that there is a slight wobble with the stock buttons, and we also know that the portal doesn't have a retention system, it's just flush all the way, we are going to check the play when we use a set of Spinnetic spinners versus the stock buttons. So here we go. You notice that there's noticeably a bit more play versus the stock buttons. Now we're going to change it up for the 2R Designs buttons. There we go, not much play, almost the same as the Spinnetic buttons. And last but not least, we have the Fishbone buttons. And right away you can tell it is noticeably taller, and because of the height, you see how it's slightly amplified. Technically it wobbles the same, but because of the distance away from the core of the spin itself, it makes you feel like there's a lot more movement. And that height difference actually affects any spinner, like even the Portal would suffer from the more wobble when you actually are fidgeting with it, versus having the stock buttons on the Portal itself, which are almost flush to the frame itself. Now that I've spoken about the wobble because of the height of the core, I'm gonna talk about the design of this spinner. Now this design, clearly you guys can tell it's pushing the weight all the way far out as it can. And the fact that this spinner is so long, coupled with the weights and the heft of this thing, this spinner classifies as a long spinner. I kid you not, I'm hitting 7 minutes or more constantly each time I do a two-handed table spin. So even though it is not a traditionally designed long spinner, in terms of long spinner designs where you actually taper all the weights out, the weights are very much wider outwards versus the actual bearing inside the core. And out here the weights are not as heavy as how it feels on the outside because of the sheer length of it. So when you spin it, you really feel the inertia. And this inertia works both ways. It's not easy to stop, but at the same time, it is not easy to get the spinner started in the first place. Now I'm gonna try and slow this down so you guys can see exactly how slow this thing really goes. Alright, just like that maybe. Right, I'm gonna slow it down some more to just about this point. And I guess by showing this to you, I hope to be able to display the kind of inertia that I'm talking about, the reluctance for this spinner to stop. Alright, I know it's gonna take a while, guys, and I apologize, it might be wasting your time, but really there's no real other way to kind of illustrate this to you. There, see, it's slowing down, and most other spinners would have already stopped by now, but it's still going on, pushing as far as it can. So this inertia is good when it comes to long spins, when you have a table spin and you manage to get a good pull, you know, things like that. But when you're actually fidgeting with it with one hand, it's kind of hard to start a spin, whether or not you're pushing it forward or you're pulling it back. Now, this is different from what I would consider fidgetability. This is actually talking about the strength that you have to apply in order to get this spinner to start spinning. It's not about whether or not it's comfortable. So hopefully this gives you guys an idea of why this is such a unique experience. Since we're talking about that, I will just talk about the fidgetability first and then expand on that and talk about more of the experience, because I gotta bring that back in one full circle. And yeah, just hear me out and you'll understand. Alright, so fidgetability of this. Actually, this spinner is pretty alright to fidget with. It's not the most comfortable, but surprisingly, it is not uncomfortable at all as well, because really, there isn't really a lot of sharp edges. In fact, there aren't many sharp edges. Look, the sharp edges are just like here and here on the raised area, but you almost never get your finger out there because you don't really reach out that far to place your finger there. So in the index finger and thumb grip, pushing forward is alright. You do have your finger pushing against this inner, I guess, bone design. This inner, yeah, I don't know what you want to call this, but it is rounded, really, really rounded. You guys can already tell on camera, this is so rounded that it's not going to cause you any discomfort. Even if you push against this edge over here, it is rounded enough to not hurt you. Now, if you're pulling back is alright, unless you get your finger snagged right here, in between this and this, then maybe you might feel some discomfort when you're pulling back, but it's hard for you to get your finger there because it will also mean that you have your middle finger really close to your index finger like that. So most of the time it'll be about this position. So that's actually quite comfortable, honestly speaking, not so bad. Oh, when you try and get your finger out too far, it's a really, really weak kind of a preloaded flick. Just sharing that with you. Also, those of you who actually have a pinch grip might find this a little bit difficult to fidget with because it's this close to your, whatever this is called. Yeah, this close to that part of your hand. You might actually hit yourself there, and that's not something that you would like, especially those of you who tend to pull your fingers in when you're performing a preloaded flick like that kind of. Yeah, then you will hit yourself over here. Now switching up the grip to the middle finger and thumb grip, pushing forward and pulling backwards with the fourth finger is the same. Not so much of discomfort, I guess, but it's more because of the heft that you actually find it difficult to want to flick it, but I'll get to that in a while. Talking about the index finger, pushing forward is very comfortable because of this. It kind of gives you a nice area to push forward because it just rolls off under your finger. Like, it's just so smooth in that sense. Like, the transition is really nice. And pulling back is okay. because of the length of this spinner, if you have your finger up here, that's completely fine. But if you have your finger down here, you're going to pull back and you want to pull your index finger back as fast as possible. So it's still alright because you actually have this little area to grip on. So this thing over here actually adds a lot to the unique fidgetability of this spinner. It feels so different from every other spinner I've tried so far because it's curving inwards. It looks nice like a fishbone, but at the same time it actually provides you with a sort of a little grip in terms of your pushing or your pulling. Since I've mentioned that fidgetability is not bad on this spinner, it's not the best, but it's not bad. But the one thing that might deter you from an enjoyable fidgeting experience is the fact that it is so heavy. Now, like I mentioned, if you have it in your middle finger and your thumb grip, pushing forward and pulling back might be quite a chore because of the weight of the spinner. It's hard to get it started. It's very fun once it starts spinning because it feels like it wants to spin on and on and on, but then getting it to start when you're pushing it forward requires a lot more strength compared to, I guess, what I am used to or what most of us are used to. And when you have it in the index finger and thumb grip, fidgeting with your middle finger is a lot easier compared to your fourth finger, simply because the middle finger is stronger than your fourth finger. But when you're performing preloaded flicks, it is comfortable, but at the same time unique because of the height of the buttons itself. Every single time you perform a preloaded flick, when you're applying pressure this way, once you let go of the flick, you immediately feel the spinner wobble a little bit, then stop wobbling and continue having a smooth spin. So it's one of the spinners that actually gives me a sort of a reaction the moment you flick it, like you feel like a 1 split second of it shaking, then it just eases out. But that also means that it is super easily affected by the gyroscopic effect. Now if you move this around here and there, you really feel that wobble. It's the strongest wobble I felt out of any spinner that I've tried so far, simply because it's so heavy and the weights are thrown out so far. Now it's not something that I really hate. Some of you out there really hate the wobble. This spinner is not for you. Just stay away from this spinner altogether. But this, I really enjoy the feeling of it wobbling slightly and then easing out, and then it feels like it just doesn't want to stop spinning. And I guess it is kind of satisfying because sometimes if a spinner spins too smooth, you don't actually feel it spinning in your hand. You want that kind of a slight vibration or resonance that is coming from the spinner that you actually feel in your fingers, and this delivers that, like super amplified. You know what I mean? I don't really know how to explain it to you. But it is a very unique experience. Do I enjoy it? Yes, I do. Do I think everyone will enjoy it? I don't dare to say that I do. I don't dare to say that I think so, because not a lot of you like wobble. So that's the thing that you guys have to take note. The next thing I'm going to mention is a downside. The fact that this core is so tall, it also means that it's not easy to find replacement buttons. I'm going to show you guys what I mean. Here I have a set of these Spinnetic XL buttons and I'm going to install them on. And these are actually one of my favorite buttons in terms of the feel, the size, and the price. And it is slightly bigger than the Fishbone Spinner's middle part, the core. But looking at it, it looks alright in terms of the size and the proportion compared to the spinner frame itself. But because it is not as tall as these, when it wobbles, you actually feel it scraping against the underside of the button, and that can be quite a disgusting kind of experience, I guess. Hear that? You guys hear that? But once it eases out, no sound, just when it moves around and wobbles, you get that immediately. Now I'm gonna move on to the 2R Designs power buttons, and surprisingly, I expected that the same thing would have happened when we talk about the Spinnetic XL buttons, but to my surprise, no. It actually works pretty well. You don't hear that scraping sound, and well, the grip is nice and everything, and it doesn't seem to be causing any problems when we're talking about using the 2R Designs power buttons from Spinnetic spinners. So that's a plus point. So not all buttons work, but some, when they do, it really changes the experience of the Fishbone Spinner altogether, because it's a very different grip. Now why am I saying that? That's because I actually don't really like the Fishbone grips or the Fishbone buttons. They are just way too smooth. I mean, they look nice and all, and they have a slight little dip, I guess, very reminiscent of the RevPunks buttons or maybe even Zero Fuel buttons, but these actually offer close to no grip at all. It is not even that deep. Yes, it just feels nice on the thumb, but it's just so smooth and so slippery that it offers almost no grip. Now when you talk about that, and you put it on a heavy spinner, there's always this constant fear of wanting to give it a good strong flick, but it's slipping out of your hand at the same time. Or when you're trying to balance the spinner on one finger like that, and you actually have a button that is so slippery, you're always worried that the spinner is going to just slip off or fall off your hand immediately. So that actually adds a slight, I guess, unrest when you're actually fidgeting with the spinner. But if your goal is to get the Fishbone Spinner as a fidget spinner, that's fine, because like the medium strength flicks, gets this spinner very nice long spin times, but at the same time you get a very nice feedback from the vibration of the spinner as well. So in terms of the fidgetability of this, it is quite high, but it is a different sort of a fidgetability as compared to, say, for example, the Axis Micro or even the Sonda Tri. The Sonda is really comfortable, and it's a pleasure to fidget with, but this is also a pleasure in a very different sense, and that's only if you are someone that is okay with wobbles, and if you are okay with just repeatedly spinning a larger size spinner over and over again that is really hefty. Now, I'm not going to compare this to the Delta Core because the Delta Core is a totally different form factor altogether. This is really just something very interesting. I can't really put my finger on it, but I'm going to tell you guys that this is a very unique experience. So I know I've said a lot about the Fishbone so far, and if you guys are actually interested, please check the video description down below because I will be putting links to the MiniPock Facebook page. And if I'm not wrong, the Fishbone Spinner is actually on pre-order right now at the MiniPock Facebook page. It is available in 3 different materials: stainless steel, brass, and copper. Very unique experience, I gotta say. On top of that, there are only 20 of each material that will be made. 20. I don't even think that MiniPock will actually make more than that. So this, not only is it a very unique experience to fidget with, but it is a collector's item simply because of the limited quantity that these will be produced in. Now, once again, this costs $120, 120 USD. But when you look at the machining and you look at all these rounded edges and you see how polished it is and polished by hand, it is not the most refined spinner. It is not a precision spinner. It is not the most perfectly balanced spinner, but it is a very unique spinner, a heavy bar style spinner, very nicely hand polished. I really respect people who actually hand polish their stuff because I don't have the patience to get it so shiny like a mirror finish. Look at that, look at how reflective this thing is, all the way down to the buttons. And it gets really long spin times, and I really mean it. Every single time I do a table spin on it, it's easily getting 7 minutes or more. Has a very unique wobble, a very thick core, and this thing is so heavy and so solid. I guess that's what I will say about this. Not everyone's cup of tea, but very unique, and this is a keeper for me because it's just so different from whatever's out there. Look at the design itself, just unique. Really looks like a fishbone. It's named according to what it looks like. Specific buttons made for this thing. Nice cuts on the side. These are really comfortable, and I like it so much that I've been fidgeting with it so much that I actually scratched it. Now, down to the final verdict of the Fishbone Spinner by MiniPock. A very simple way to summarize everything is this spinner is not everyone's cup of tea. You're either gonna hate it or you're gonna love it. And for me, it's a really unique experience, and this is one of the keepers for sure because I cannot find the same experience with any other spinner, even though it is a R188 bearing with a, you know, that kind of a spinetic style bearing retention system. But the way it's made, the height, the buttons, the way it wobbles, the way it gets crazy long spins, this texture over here, the mirror finish and all that, such a unique experience that I don't get from any other spinner at all. And the spin characteristics is so special that you actually recognize it immediately. And the only way for me to kind of bring that across to you guys is you guys have to try it to find out, I suppose. That's the only way I can say it. Like, if I looked at this as a product without actually trying it, I probably I'm gonna be honest and say that I don't think I'll put $120 down for this. But now that I've actually experienced it for a week on my EDC, this thing is a spinner that I'm really enjoying. I've grown to like it quite a lot. For the price tag, maybe not so much. I would think that I'm actually paying for the machining qualities, I'm actually paying for the workmanship on this and the materials and stuff, but it's really about the experience of this spinner. And I really don't have another way to explain it to you guys except that it's a really unique spinner. It's really either you're gonna love it or you're gonna hate it, guys. Really not everyone's cup of tea. And that's about it. Once again guys, if you are interested in getting one of these for yourself, check the links in the video description because these are super limited. Don't forget, only 20 pieces of each material made. I hope that I provided enough information to help you decide whether or not the Fishbone Spinner is a spinner for you. Thank you for watching and sticking all the way throughout once again everyone, I really appreciate it. And I will catch you in the next slice of my life. Bye!